way they've been raised some are false, and they wanted to believe in the dream.
It changed drastically when John F. Kennedy got elected. It was the new frontier. Rather than war, let's have the Peace Corps. It was the political utopia of liberalism.
The kids started rising up against the unfairnesses of life. So much of Phil's work ended up being about the things going on in America during the 60s.
Elvis Presley changed their world culturally by singing songs, and I guess they thought, well, perhaps we could change the world politically through singing songs as well.
He walked all over his own growing land, from the New York Island to the California sand.
We went to the local school, which was primarily agricultural, and I believe we were the only two Jews in the school. And so we learned what it was like to be Jewish. Well, you're Jewish. So we learned how to fight.
And now he's bound for glory.
The first music I was interested in was Presley, was Hank Williams, was Lefty Frizzell, Farron Young, Webb Pierce. That was the first music I liked. Jim Glover was my roommate at Ohio State.
I walked past his room and he was in there playing his records.
He taught me how to, my first chords.
We started talking, and when he found out I played guitar, he got really interested. When I said folk music, he never heard of the Weavers, Pete Seeger. I kind of introduced him to the left-wing music, you know, the people's music.
Now they sing out his praises on every distant shore, but so few remember what he was fighting for.
We grew up totally apolitical. There were no politics whatsoever. And Phil went to Jim's house for dinner, and his father was very left-wing.
My father was a fellow traveler for the Communist Party, so I used to tell Phil about McCarthyism and all that stuff. Phil had gone to military school, and all of a sudden he becomes excited about left-wing politics. So he had this conflict right from the start.
I mean, the thing to remember about PhilOchs is that left-wing politics was his career. But what was in his heart was not left-wing politics at all. What was in his heart, as we know, was John Wayne and Gary Cooper.
There's an American mythic tradition of the individual who holds out on the jury or chases away the bad guys and so on.
Quite a few of that generation. You can see it in their iconography, that single figure that was going to make all the difference.
To be the hero that saves the country, is something that I think he did strive for.
Phil grew up in the movie theaters, and I think that's what really created that America is a great country, and America, you know, the good guys should fight the bad guys.
I imagined him the sort of guy who maybe if the radio's on with a song that seems to suit the mood of the moment, he might fade it out before he opens the door to get out of his car. You know, start scene now. He was kind of the hero of his own movie.
And right then it was like the election was coming up.
For the 1960 election, Kennedy against Nixon, Jim Glover was sure that Nixon was going to win, and Phil swore Kennedy would win.
Phil said, "You want to bet?" And I said, "Yeah, let's bet. I'll bet $50 against my K guitar." Phil really wanted the guitar, so he won the guitar and the bet.
Jim Glover and Phil started a folk duo. They actually broke up before the first gig. Jim decided he was going to be a professional singer and went to Greenwich Village. Later, Phil dropped out of school. And he said, "That's it. There's no reason for me to finish. I'm going to New York. I'm going to become the best songwriter in the country."
Sometimes on my way to another working day on my way.
Greenwich Village was the place. Everybody wanted to go to Greenwich Village.
Those were the golden years.
The village was the core. The sights and the sounds, the sensory overload was just unbelievable. My first night at the Gaslight, the musicians, the poets, I'd never heard anybody read a poem before.
But I have no time to play, and I hope that I will see you on my way.
Phil was really there to have a good time. We all were.
Well, sometimes I am happy, sometimes sad.
And let's face it,
thinking of the good times I have had.
Folk music was an art that was pretty easy to get into.
Sometimes down, sometimes up, sometimes in.
I was living with Jane at her apartment on Thompson Street. Well, I met her playing at the Raffio. She invited me up to her apartment, and we became a duo. And Phil showed up one day. "Hey, what you doing, man?"
They had been a duet
Now we were 3 people, and I was sort of like the new kid on the block for their relationship.
Gene couldn't stand the fact that Phil was a slob and he took all of Jim's time. So Gene couldn't wait to get Phil out of the apartment. So there was a good friend of Gene's named Alice Skinner.
My impression when we met, you know, we were 2 rejected people. And some of that even can be an attraction sometimes, you know, but it seemed to work. Phil and I moved to 178 Bleecker Street, right in the heart of the village.
Everybody hung out at their apartment. It was a very cool place.
Bob and Susie would come over for dinner sometimes, and people would start coming knocking on the door, and Dylan would jump out the back window and leave.
Eric Anderson was around there a lot. Peter LaFar.